Do you know that the devil can work miracles? But before we get to that, have you ever wondered what happens when you die? I'm certain we all have. You know, you hear all these surrounding stories concerning your deceased loved one, whether they're looking down from heaven, whether you can communicate with them, and then you have these movie clips portraying that somehow when you die you can still come back alive and probably interact with one or two persons. And I just want to show a clip to show exactly what I'm talking about. So take a look at this clip.
Sterling Johnson.
Oh, no. Y'all got me messed up. I'm not dead. I'm right here. See, I'm not dead. I'm here.
At this time, you may choose to recess or stay seated to view the remains.
So what we would have seen there was that this girl, she got into an accident and somehow her spirit came back alive, or so they portray it to be. She attends a funeral but no one notices her, and later on in the movie she was able to communicate with one or two persons. Now what they are portraying here is that somehow there is consciousness after death and that you can communicate with the dead. But what does the scripture says? If we look at Ecclesiastes 9 verses 5 and verses 10, it tells us that the living know that they shall die, but the dead know nothing. The memory is forgotten. There is no work, no device, no knowledge, no wisdom that goeth in the grave. So that tells us that there is no consciousness. When you die, you go to the dust. And what about the spirit, you might ask? According to Ecclesiastes 12 verses 7, it says that the spirit goes back to God. So it is not roaming, it is not traveling, it is not haunting anybody. Okay, and then Hebrews 9 verses 27 tells us that it is appointed that man should die. As long as you live, you will die. But then it's judgment. So if everyone, when they die, they go to heaven, where does that leave judgment? And that's what we want to come to, the origin of spiritualism and the different instances where the devil would have worked miracles. If we look at the story with Eve and the serpent in the Garden of Eden, Satan would have used the serpent as a medium to speak to her. That right there was a miracle. And the knowledge that he would have presented to her was that dying you will not surely die, which is to portray, again, there's consciousness after death and the immortality of the soul. But according to the scripture, that is not so. If we look at the story with Moses and Aaron, when they went out to Egypt and they were before Pharaoh, they cast the rods to the ground and they turned into serpents. Pharaoh called for his magicians, his sorcerers, and they did the same thing. That too was a miracle. And if we look at the story with Saul and Samuel, when Samuel had died, Saul wasn't hearing from God, so he sought after a familiar spirit, which is the witch at Endor. When she raised up the gods from the earth, Saul perceived it to be Samuel, and then he went to communicate with this spirit. Notice, the witch, sorcerers, magician, these are the person that these miracles was worked through. We know that they are not from God, so definitely it was the devil using them to work these miracles. So it is a reality. And why is this so important? It's because the scripture tells us that in the latter times many will give heed to seducing spirits. And in Revelation 16 tells us that there were three unclean spirits like frogs that came out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, which is the spirit of devil working miracles. And what stood out to me was that these false prophet was being used to work these miracles. So not everyone that said Lord and work at a miracle mean that it is instigated by God. And in another video I will show exactly who is a prophet of God and of the devil. And that is why it's important to have the proper understanding of spiritualism and death and the reality of the devil working miracles, that even if he present himself to you in the form of your deceased loved one, you will have substantial evidence in your mind to rebuke him.